Howdy, folks. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. We're here. We're here to discuss the playoff scenario and a few teams that have been eliminated, Russ. And we'll get to one. We'll get to one specifically a little later on, but we have some pre-show stuff. Go ahead.
All right. So the All-American Football League. When I heard about it, it was a bad idea. We've talked about it before. Tom Dundon came in. He was going to change it, help it, give it plenty of cash. He had, pledged, I don't know, $250 million. And it lasted a couple weeks. Like, that's it. And
he threw away $70 million. And the first thing I thought was, if you're going to throw away $70 million, could you throw it away to me?
That wasn't my first thought. That's always your first thought. But my first thought was, I actually consulted other people that I know and said, even if I was a billionaire, would you be mad that I threw that away? And they'd be like, yeah. And so what it turns out is, as it's been reported, there's a gambling app that he was hoping to get going with that league. And now apparently I think he owns the app. And I think that's what he took out of that league was whoever created the app. He's got the app. The league went under. The other league owners were not happy. I know they were trying to talk to the NFLPA and others. It didn't work out. So, and again, I just don't understand how or why he would lose $70 million in this, and then, like we heard about with Carolina, not spending as much as he can. Like, it's just, I can't make sense of it, but it's not my money.
What I wonder is did he do this to get the app so he could use it as an application for the NHL going forward? Because we know with legalized gambling in New Jersey and all the situations with the league where they're associating with gambling sites and other entities that is going to be part of the dynamic for the league going forward. So maybe this is something that he wants to implement or use. I mean, it's possible.
It's a good point. They lasted 8 weeks with him, and there are a lot of articles that say that he did it literally just so he could get the app. And we'll see. Maybe that'll make him look really smart in the end. Yeah. But right now, that's a pretty costly app. And the bad part about this whole thing, whether he liked the app or not, I got to believe he could have bought the app for less and not bought the league. The league was flawed because, as I mentioned, next year at this time, the XFL was going to be running. And they were going to steal some of their players for sure.
Yeah, and I heard something. I mean, there definitely is more financial backing with the XFL within.
Yeah, of course there is.
I mean, Vince McMahon is basically the P.T. Barnum of the 21st century, but apparently he's sold like $250 million of WWE stock to back this league. So I think he sees an opportunity here either to be sort of a developmental league for the NFL, which would be a financial boon for him, or to be sort of like a USFL type of competition to them.
He's going to have the president tweeting about it because it'll be like the buddies like it used to be with headshot.
Because his wife does stuff for Donald Trump?
Yeah, Donald Trump is in the WWE Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
So they're buddies.
The reason you have 2 seasons in the United States of America, football season and waiting for football season. It's like winter and August in Winnipeg. That's how big a cultural footprint that the NFL has. It's the granddaddy of revenue for all leagues, and everyone thinks there's a slice of that pie for them.
The
problem with the 30,000-foot view around this is the entry point costs to getting that slice of pie, and sustainability is huge. It's like getting a fully loaded 747 off the tarmac. You burn a lot going up. But once you get it up there, and no one's figured out how long that burn period is for. No one's done the math on that.
Right.
But once you put it up there, it'll fly. You have basically February through probably end of June to run something before the college stuff kicks in late July, training camps open for the NFL. You've got to find a model that fits in that time period that doesn't run the same length. So maybe it's a 10-game season, and then you got to it just seems that everyone thinks, oh, I can figure out if I can just get enough people, I can sell football.
Yeah,
it's not simple.
Your window is like March to July. The only thing, the only thing that would interfere is the interest in the draft. But other than that, March to July, it's pretty free. And then you're right, you get into college teams getting ready for the season, and
but a couple of weird things. Again, people were gambling on it. You had no idea who these players were, as far as you knew who they were in college. You didn't know what they were that moment. You're betting against teams you don't know anything about. Like, I don't understand why people just, instead of gambling this money away, don't do something else with it. I get
because they're degenerates.
No, not everybody is. Some people just like the action. I get it. But I'm not saying the whole gambling thing is bad. I'm saying when you're gambling on a league you know nothing about, and you know nothing about players, you don't know if the spread that Vegas is giving you is fair. Like, you shouldn't gamble on that. That was the part that just freaked me out.
It's like these idiots who make the prop bets on the friggin' coin flip. They're degenerates.
Yeah.
And I'm okay. I just want to just mention this, and I'm not complaining. I am just making an observation because of what happened last year and what's happened in the first 5 games this year. And it goes across all sports. There are teams in hockey, there are teams in basketball, there are teams in football that get devastated by injury. I have never seen a team 2 years in a row get as devastated by injury as much as the New York Yankees have. And I mean, they're still a good team, even though they've lost a bunch of players. But Russ, Severino, Betances, Stanton, Hicks. I mean, I'm just saying. And last year they lost a bunch. Most of these same guys for long periods of time. I mean, you have to wonder if it's their medical staff, if it's their evaluation process, or if it's just fate. But
I'm just broken. Only they could buy.
You're breaking up there. Go say that again.
I said I'm heartbroken. Only they could buy their way out of it.
Well, I mean, they restrained themselves from buying their way out of things.
The irony here, no, they could match the Mets. They've had more severe injuries for sure. I mean, Yoenis Cespedes might not even play until the end of July because he had double heel surgery. Like, the Mets have craziness going on too. I get it. I don't have an answer for you as to why it's happening for the Yankees. It is rough, though, because this is an era where they're going restraint, and if they actually stay in it, they're going.
Russ, why don't you sign off and sign back on, because you're really breaking up.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's better. Go ahead.
That's another thing. No.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's start the show. We have a little bit of breaking news here that we can start off the show with. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Wednesday, April 3rd, 2019.
I'm Peter Tessier in sunny Winnipeg.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology. Yeah, it's going to be 70 here.
Oh, shut up. And I'm Michael Rogello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. The playoffs start 1 week from today. Thank goodness. Yeah, we'll discuss some of the teams that will not be making the postseason in a little bit. But some breaking news here from Pierre LeBrun of The Athletic and TSN. The NHL and the NHLPA have agreed to a 1-year extension of the current divisional alignment and playoff format. This is not any kind of big news because they basically thought that this was going to happen. The matter will continue to be discussed between the two sides moving forward. So the earliest change would be for 2020 and 2020, the 2020-21 season, if and when there will be change. Now, the reason that he says that is because it is widely known that the players are not happy with the current divisional format and the playoff format. And we know that certain fan bases, Toronto, are probably not fans of it, especially when their team, the Leafs are, I think, 5th overall in the in the NHL this season, and will be playing the second or third ranked team in the league. I mean, there should be some benefit to having a good regular season, and right now there's limited benefit based on the divisional format. Now, go ahead, Russ.
On the table for next year. I don't understand why it has to be for 2020, 2021.
Well, I mean, this is the agreement. I have a feeling that what this is, why it's being delayed 1 year, is this is being folded into a possible issue of the new CBA, because clearly this is the PA wants things changed. The league, we know Gary Bettman. I mean, Gary Bettman doesn't want to change the playoff format, doesn't want to change the sort of a play-in game to increase the number of teams, even though Seattle will be make it 32, and right now we have 50% of the league missing the playoffs. I think, Peter, these are all points for negotiation for the new CBA, and Bettman is not giving up one thing right now that he can use as leverage for something down in a year or so.
There are so many different things that are going to come out, and I think one of the things you touched on, maybe you didn't, but is this idea of these massive signing bonuses for players. Like, that's going to come out. Players probably like them. There's probably teams like Winnipeg, for one, that is like, well, okay, now what if Patrick Laine wants an Austin Matthews signing bonus, and all those things, right? Like, there's all these little things giving out. And the one thing that Gary Bettman has learned, having gone through 3 lockouts, is how to hold his cards close to his chest and be very coy about negotiating points. That alone is the reason. I mean, it is the primary reason that he is still employed, because it's not because of popularity contest. It's because he gets the job done for the owners. Yeah. And whether you like him or not, if you're an owner, you're probably pretty darn happy with his track record.
And Russ,
you love Gary Bettman as an owner, there's no question.
I really think that the main reason that they missed the Olympics, they didn't go to the Olympics last year, was not because of where it was. It was because they wanted to retain it as a negotiating issue for the next CBA. The players wanted to go, the league didn't want to go, but I think it was less about the inconvenience of not going than, okay, this is something we can use for 2022 in China, and the players clearly want to go, and okay, if they want to go so badly, then you're gonna have to give up something to get it.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, so we all have to suffer another year with this playoff format.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that when we're going to talk about some of the matchups now, some of the matchups are not hard and fast. There's still some flexibility going on here. Last night we had a number of games that had some significant impact on the.
Wait, Mike, I do have breaking news. Sorry.
Go ahead.
People saying they can't see me, and they're having a problem with that. I don't know. Can you see me?
Yes, I can see you.
I can see you.
Some people
I don't think they're complaining, Russ.
That's a plus, if you ask me. Sorry.
Carry on. Survey in the chat room. Should Russ just turn off his camera permanently?
Okay. First, let's start with the game that I was at, which was fairly meaningless for one team. For another team, it was very meaningful, and you could see that based on how the one team played, and that was the Maple Leafs. It was a 4-1 loss to the Carolina Hurricanes, who right now are at 95 points, in a decent position here to, if they win one of the remaining 2 games, to lock in a playoff spot. They play New Jersey and at Philadelphia in their remaining 2 games. And Russ, last night, what I was struck by was, Carolina's defense played really well. Mrazek played pretty well. Was the lack of effort from Toronto, and maybe it's understandable because they clinched a playoff spot and they weren't going anywhere. And the lack of performance once again by backup goaltender Garrett Sparks.
It was a combo of all those things. Again, like the Leafs defense was bad because getting in on Sparks was easy. Marincin was bad on that first goal because he definitely didn't help Sparks. I think it did hit off his leg, whatever. Sparks definitely could have done something, but he didn't react to it.
He wasn't against the post. That was the problem.
Right. He wasn't hugging the post the way he should. But I will still contend that if that Nylander goal wasn't called an offsides,
right,
that the Leafs would have tried harder or been better mentally. When that got taken off the board, I'm telling you, and then they go down 1-0. I don't want to say they totally gave up, but they definitely took their foot off. Whatever gas there was, it wasn't a lot.
Yeah, I think they were already down 1-0. I think it would have tied it.
Maybe, that's right. It would have tied it. Yeah.
But to your point though, earlier in the season in that big game on Long Island, Zach Hyman scores a goal. It's called back on an offside. Or it was called back. I think it was on an offside, and they lost all energy after that. Yeah. There may be
something to them being mentally fragile. I've been saying it for about a week and a half. Right. I haven't seen any change in that.
But it was also second of back-to-back.
Yeah.
It was also the fact that they, even though that goal didn't count, they only had 3 shots in almost the first half of the game. Then they turn it on like they normally do. But this is the thing. It's like they're locked into third place. They're playing Boston. Boston is gonna have home ice advantage. You look at what they got out of their backup goaltender, and you can't blame just solely Garrett Sparks, and we won't go on long about this, but Curtis McElhinney, who was the backup last night for Mrazek, had a 2.10 goals against last year, had a really good record. They didn't, as typical Babcock, he only used them, I think, 17 or 18 games, but when they did go to him, the team played well in front of him, and he had a really good year, and he's had a good year this year with Carolina. Opposed to this year, where Sparks has lost 8 of the last 9. And they're 6 points behind Boston. So I don't think it's hyperbole to say, Russ, or Pete, I'll ask you this, Peter. I don't think it's hyperbole to say that Garrett Sparks cost them home ice advantage, because I think they would have had 6 more points.
I mean, I think you can make that argument. I think that's fair.
You think he home ice advantage against whom?
Against in general in the playoffs.
Yeah. They have 99 points. And he has a 500. He has a 500 record and a 902. Or I think he's actually below 500, and he has a 902 save percentage and a goals against over 3. Yeah. If you would have had Curtis McElhinney as your backup, they would have had more points this year than 99, yeah. And they probably would have be at least equal, maybe more than Boston. And home ice advantage could be the difference between losing and winning that series.
Absolutely, it could. You know what? Yeah. I mean, look, you want to talk I don't think you can make an argument that says Sparks, the usage and the role of Sparks had an effect on the Leafs. I don't think you can say that. There are other things too. And people who want to sort of be believers in the glass half full types will say, well, there's other arguments you can make too. Sure. I totally agree with that. And if you want to get back into backup goalie problems, last night, same thing in Winnipeg, 2 brutal goals on Eric Comrie.
Well, the one is tough. I mean, the one behind his back, that's happened to a lot of good ones.
It's unlucky. That's not bad one. It's a brutal goal. It's a brutal goal to give up, but it's not his fault.
Yeah, the Rask one was bad.
Oh, yeah, that was brutal. Yeah, and all of a sudden, the Jets went 0 for 10 points this season against the Wild. What would getting 2 points out of that, 3 points or 4 points mean? Like, you can find these micro things that people say, well, 82 games, okay, but that's 5 games out of your 82 game season. That's more than 5% of your games. You got 0 points against the same opponent. You didn't learn anything. You didn't change anything. You didn't do anything. It's the same. And it can be the same for usage. You didn't learn anything. You didn't change anything.
You know what this game was for, though, Peter? this game, look, Eric Comrie has worked very hard just to play in the NHL.
Yeah.
He had some injuries. He was a top flight goalie at one time. He and Demko are buddies. I think this was just about the organization rewarding him with a start in a meaningless game.
Yeah.
The different what you're saying, Peter, and if you look at the standings right now with Winnipeg and Nashville tied at 96, is that the minuscule things, the little things, are what can really cost you. And right now, with 2 games left to go in the regular season, 1 point could be the difference between you playing Dallas or playing
St. Louis or Nashville and losing home ice advantage.
Yes, so that's really.
Yeah. So, I mean, these are little things, and now they matter. So the points and decisions you make in November have the exact same impact as the ones you have in the late of or in the early beginnings of April. You can't take your foot off the gas with your decision making either.
I'll tell you what took their foot off the gas for them, Peter, for Winnipeg. From what I noticed just watching the highlight package, it was pretty easy for Minnesota to get behind their defense.
Oh, was it ever? This whole gap control thing has been a major issue for the Jets with the defense, and it's not really being solved with Josh Morrissey or Dustin Byfuglien coming back as they did. I mean, there were some head scratching moments there, and I don't know if you guys heard, but after the game, it was the longest players only meeting has ever happened since the Thrashers moved to Winnipeg. Only Blake Wheeler came out and spoke to the media, and that was the end of it.
Wow.
Well, yeah, not a good time, right? You know, you've got a playoff spot, and now you're having these things.
Now Morrissey did not play last night, correct?
No, Morrissey, he's skating.
Okay,
but he is not. He's in a non-contact jersey.
Okay, so basically Morrissey and Jake Gardner are in the same positions right now.
Yeah.
I think they want to both teams want to get them in for at least a game before the playoffs.
Yeah.
The interesting thing was, and then we'll just spread out the not concentrate on the Leafs. The one thing interesting that I heard from Babcock after the game last night was that he's considering over the last couple games of the regular season, if they get Gardner in, to go 11 forwards and 7 defensemen. And that's a good idea, because in case Gardner, comes back and plays and gets hit and gets hurt, then you're not going to be shorthanded on the blue line. But the problem is, based on the managed minutes that Calle Rosen had being called up against the Islanders, he played a little more last night and was on the ice for, I think, 1 and maybe 2 goals. The number 7 defenseman is going to be Martin Marincin, and Martin Marincin is a freaking disaster.
But he's a 7. I mean, you can't get you get absolutely incensed about a 7. It's not like he's going to be starting, Mike.
No, but he's going to be on the ice, Russ, and he is a guaranteed.
He's going to be on the ice. He may never play a game.
He's a guaranteed goal if he's on the ice.
But he may not make it to the ice. He may be eating popcorn the whole series.
Well, maybe, but
for all 4 games, he might be eating popcorn.
Well, if he's on the bench, he will be used. He'll be used in penalty killing. He'll be used for the.
They're not going to play 7 in the playoffs. They're not going to.
They might. They might, especially if Gardner is in the lineup. I think he'll guarantee. Russ, the option is, okay, would you play Kadri, Matthews, and Tavares a little extra, and also give matchup problems to the Bruins, and by doing that, and guarantee yourself against being shorthanded on defense if Gardner gets hurt? I think they might do it, and that might be a little.
No, I'm just going to play Jake Gardner less. I am not going to play Marincin because I think Jake Gardner is going to get hurt. No.
Well, we'll see. It's just being speculated on. We'll see next Thursday when they.
You love to sound the alarm. You do.
Well, I'm right though. Okay. So, in the we're just going quickly over the scores from last night.
Oh, I do have to tell people this real quick. They should go to my Twitter account or Jeff Marek and look at Jeremy Bracco playing fetch with his Husky on the ice. It's fantastic.
And that's AHL scoring leader Jeremy Bracco.
Yep.
The Predators won 3-2 against Buffalo. still some questions right now regarding the Sabres situation at the end of the year and the future of Phil Housley. I think, and Elliot Friedman reported it, and I talked about this on Buffalo Radio last week, that I don't think Jason Botterill wants to fire him. So it sounds like that he would only do it under pressure from ownership. But the problem,
would ownership get rid of both is the question, because we can't put anything past Terry Pegula. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
No, I mean, let's just say, and the Sabres have not announced a hard and fast date for their end of the season presser. Their season ends, I think, on Saturday, so you would think it would be Monday or Tuesday that they would have it locker clean out and all that thing, but they haven't announced that day, so maybe there are some decisions to be made. So we'll see. The Bruins opened up a can of whoop ass on the Columbus Blue Jackets 6-2. I mean, that's a big loss for Columbus, Russ, because they're in that tight race, and right now they're tied with Montreal, but I believe Columbus has the advantage on regulation and overtime wins.
Yeah, I pointed that out yesterday, but like destiny is in their hands. Destiny's in their hands. They just have to win. Just win these 2 games. Pretend it's the playoffs. Win. Put Bob in an isolation tank if you have to, if that's what it's going to take. But they have to win these games. They have to go into the playoffs with some momentum. It's just, boy, this is just a tough loss for them. They're going to make it. It's going to be tough for Montreal to make it, but boy, if they were to lose 2 and not make it, I wouldn't even want to think about that.
Well, Columbus's last 2 games at the Rangers, at Ottawa, Montreal, at Washington, but Washington really has nothing to play for now since they I think they need 1 point to lock in first place, so that game would have some meaning for them, because Islanders have 99 and Washington has 102. So then they'll be in a little bit of trouble. Toronto really has nothing to play for, and I think they'll probably rest some players, although they're going to play Frederick Anderson on Saturday because they have a long break between the last game and the beginning of the playoffs. So I mean, Peter, it's going to be tough for, I mean, one of those teams. Right now it's coming down to it with only 2 games left. Yeah,
it's this whole mess is, well, that's exactly what it is. It's a mess. And as long as essentially what has to happen here is Winnipeg has to keep winning and hope basically they will win in ROW if everyone wins out. So they have to win out. And Colorado is, they're playing for something. Maybe not a first round match with Calgary. It's, and they have the chance to upset Dallas. I mean, there's a lot of things going on here.
Yeah.
I did want to mention something that was mentioned on the midday show. They did say that Ottawa was going to use Joey Daccord against Buffalo, not against Columbus. So Columbus is going to have to beat Craig Anderson.
Which, I mean, that's good. I mean, like I said yesterday when we made our predictions, I had a problem. They have every right to do it because they won the President's Trophy. They're home and cooled out. I do have a problem with them playing Vasilevsky against Ottawa and then playing Eddie Pasquale against Montreal, and they affected that because Montreal scored 4 goals and won 4-2. And I think that's Tampa Bay saying we want to play Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, they have every right to do it, but it is a little smelly. Now the Wild beat the Jets 5-1. The Red Wings beat the Penguins 4-1. That's a little bit.
Hold on, we got breaking news here.
Go ahead.
Real breaking news. Sarah Siv writes out of Carolina that the NHL told the Canes that they can't sign and trade Fox. Wow.
What? Really? They can't. Well, they can't trade his rights.
I mean, this is what's written, that they can't sign and trade him, which doesn't leave them with many good options.
Okay, so they can trade after. Maybe it's after the season they can, because
I guess it's after the season, but maybe like a team like the Rangers or other teams wanted to get him in there
and burn
here, and now you can't.
Right, and you know what? That might affect. I mean,
that could affect everything. He might just go back and then just say, "I'll deal with it next year."
and then he'll be a UFA. And not to say that it may change his mind. If he wants to go to the Rangers, he'll go to the Rangers. But when it's a UFA situation and you have an agent and he's going to say, you know what, you may want to go to this team, but let's shop you around and see if you can get the best offer and you can get the best bonuses. If the Rangers will give him Schedule A, Schedule B, give him everything.
I just, so this brings up a good argument because I was talking about it this morning on Sirius as well. What is the big deal with the league not letting them do this? Like right now, this was the best way for Carolina to capture some sort of value for him. And they might have been able to get as high as a second, I think, at least a third.
Right.
And that's what he was. He was a third-round pick. Now,
well, is there a deadline in terms of him declaring whether he goes back or not? I mean, is there a time frame?
Yeah, I'm sure there is, but it's not anytime soon.
Okay.
But the idea was, it just seems weird. It's like if we're already at the point where a guy can declare he's not going to sign with this team, like he's not going to play for this team.
Right.
What's the difference if they go ahead and they trade him so another team can use him, whoever that is now? And look, I'm not saying it should always happen because honestly, Fox probably did give some overtones to Carolina thinking they had a chance at signing him. And so they threw him in the trade. Otherwise, I don't know why they would have traded, gotten him thrown in the trade. And now he's basically turned down two franchises, Calgary and Carolina. So I'm not saying I feel bad for Fox.
Maybe the league is just saying if you're going to make this deal, you had to make it before February 25th. I mean because that's the deadline in terms of signing players like from Europe to qualify for the playoffs. That's the deadline for a number of situations. So maybe they're interpreting it as, okay, you have to, if it's your player who was a college player and you sign him and you put him in the lineup, that's one thing. If it's a player that is a college player that you drafted or acquired and he doesn't want to play for you, then you have to wait until after the season to move him. That's probably what their interpretation is. And I don't think it bars Carolina from being able to get something back for him, but from the Fox,
but the value would have been higher. Could they do it if they could have done it while the season was going? Because then another team could pop them right in there,
right?
And I don't see why not.
But yeah, I sort of agree with the rest. The problem is what if Fox didn't know what he wanted to do by February, right? So he sits there and he finally decides, okay, maybe he played his final games at Harvard. Maybe they're going to the Frozen Four. Maybe they were whatever, right? Yeah. He wants to do that. And then he says, no, I'm going to go pro. And I want to cash in now and get a couple games in.
And his representatives are talking to Carolina, and Carolina says, okay, we don't want to give you a 2-year deal. We want a 3-year ELC. We're going to give you the Schedule A. We're not going to give you the Schedule B bonuses. Right. We're only going to get like 250,000 bonus instead of 850. And he says, go fish.
Right.
Yeah.
Everything changes.
Yeah. So, I mean, the guy's going to get his money. Like, I think I don't have like some sort of burning empathy for him and poor Fox. Right? But the point being is, what harm does it do to let Carolina trade right now?
That's what I'm saying. It's the delivery method.
And let the guy get a contract prorated for 2 days and a $250,000 bonus. What does that do to anyone? How does that make? What's the trickle down that they want to prevent on that? That's what I mean.
We've seen instances where, like I said, I remember like Matt Fratton years ago with the Leafs. He was a Leaf draft pick. He was playing at North Dakota. He signed a contract. He played the last game of the regular season for the Leafs, and it burned the first year of the ELC. That was the carrot that they offered to him to get him signed and to get him to restricted free agency so he could negotiate a new deal. That probably that was the carrot for Fox to sign that deal and burn the first year of entry level. And when he found out him and Carolina wasn't a good fit, I don't know if the signals were mixed that he get to go someplace else, but in the end, he's the loser here because he doesn't get to burn the first year of his ELC. But it's not a disaster. So, let me just quickly go over the the scenario here. Like I said, Carolina, 95 points. They play New Jersey and at Philadelphia the last 2 games. Columbus at 94. They play at the Rangers, at Ottawa the last 2 games. Montreal, 94. At Washington and Toronto the last 2 games. In the West, Arizona loses. Colorado, they beat the Edmonton Oilers. Wow, 6-2. And now Colorado's at 88, and Arizona is at 84. So any
pretty safe bet.
Pretty safe bet that Colorado is going to be the final wild card team in the West. And I give all the credit to Arizona sticking in this long, but in the end, the injuries really killed them. And Colorado will likely play Calgary in the first round. Now, Russ, the 2 teams that were eliminated with the victory by Colorado, one was the Chicago Blackhawks, which you called a couple weeks ago, but they hung in a lot longer than most people thought. Did. And we'll talk about them in a minute, but let's start with the Wild. And they were eliminated. And the first question I have is, have we seen the last of Bruce Boudreau in Minnesota?
Yes, but they'll let the season end first. They're gonna,
it'll happen next week.
It'll happen. They'll even let it go a day or so. I think they'll be
going down the Bruce Boudreau train thought. I know this kind of derails what you're thinking, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
He gets let go. Does he immediately become a candidate for someone like the Flyers?
I don't know. I don't know about the Flyers, but if the Sabres fire Housley, and there's no connection between Botterill and Boudreau, but if the Sabres wanted to get a name in here and somebody who's good with the media, I wouldn't insult Bruce Boudreau to say that he's anything like Rex Ryan in the NFL, but he does have that sort of ebullient personality. And is somebody that the press likes, and especially being a former. He's a great quote. He's a former Leaf from the Toronto area. He's made no bones that he's a Leaf fan.
Yeah.
But he obviously when he's coaching another team, that's the team he's concentrating on. So that might be a little bit of a problem. But I do think that if the Sabres fire Housley, that Boudreau might be somebody that they would go after. But what I'm concerned about with the Wild is under Paul Fenton, you started to see a bit of a teardown, a turn towards trading for younger, cheaper players, and it seemed to have a good effect for them because they moved out a Granlund. And they got that Kevin Fiala, and he's a cheaper, younger player. And I think Fiala is a good player. They traded Charlie Coyle, and Russ was quick to point out that Ryan Donato was a really good player, and Ryan Donato played very well for the Wild.
Yeah, he was great.
But will that trend continue of Fenton, trading older, more expensive players and getting younger guys back? I think that there's a possibility that it will, and that would lead me to believe that if they're going after a coach, it would be somebody who is more of a teacher and somebody who would work better with younger players.
Yeah, I think there's a chance for that. I do.
I think there's logic to that, Mike. The problem, what we don't understand right now about the Wild is, what are they trying to do, right? Like we don't know. Like, with a lot of teams, you can sort of get a pulse on it. With Philly, they realized something was wrong with the way they believed the culture of the organization was. They get rid of one.
Mm-hmm.
There's an idea there. Buffalo were sort of waiting to find out, right?
Yeah.
Again, but and then what else? And Ottawa, we sort of know.
Edmonton. LA.
Sort of know. LA, we know probably something's going to change. They're going to have to make changes. Who else?
Ottawa.
Yeah, Ottawa. Ottawa's curious all the time. But
Florida.
Minnesota has a team that is, and they have pieces that are pretty good. So
they are. I go back to, had they been healthy, they definitely would have made the playoffs. And I do think they could have had a decent run. Again, you lose your number one center, your number one defenseman.
Yeah.
No team's going to survive that. But they did a pretty good job surviving. So I think you make a good point. The pieces are good. They might have to swap out one more older piece.
Yeah.
and I don't think it's Zach Parise, but it might be.
We've talked about Spurgeon with a year left in his contract. He's making over $5 million, and Dumba will be back.
Yeah.
So you have Dumba and Suter and Jonas Brodin on the blue line. But they, then if you're trading Spurgeon, then your top 4 is now a top 3, and I don't think you have
still
anybody.
Have Philip Johansson. They still have guys in the system. So yeah, I think Spurgeon is that guy, and he's not old. I think, what is he, 27, 26?
Yeah, something like that.
I don't think that's a problem, but it does save them some more money. I think that'll be the last of the cap savings moves.
Mm-hmm.
They just won't be big players in free agency, but if they can be healthy next year, they have a pretty good team, as shown.
Yeah. Now, switching to Chicago, we know that there were problems at the beginning of the year. I think some of those problems are still there. I mean, Duncan Keith and Seabrook are not the defensemen that they were 5 years ago. And
pizza's really not pizza. Like we get
their Chicago popcorn is better than any other popcorn. Their contracts are boat anchors, but I think there's reason for encouragement because of the trades that Bowman made, bringing in Perlini, bringing in Strome, bringing in Kajula, getting rid of the Brandon Mannings. Now, the thing is, Russ, they're going to have to sign these guys now.
Yeah.
Strome, I believe, has a year left in his ELC. So does DeBrincat. But I think Bowman has to be proactive to get them under contract at a reasonable amount. And if you look at their roster, if they can't move those boat anchors on the blue line, which they can't, guys like Artem Anisimov and Brandon Saad, who have short-term left on their deals, I think that Bowman's going to have to move them out to create the space to be able to sign Strome and DeBrincat.
Yeah, and I think that's what they'll do. Right now, they're going to be like this for a few years, where Kane and Taves and some of the young guys, DeBrincat, they'll bring them to a certain point to the edge.
Yeah.
Even Crawford's good play. And if fortuitous things happen, maybe they could still sneak into the playoffs and lose in the first round, but they're just not a threat. Out in the West, they are not a threat.
Well, they also have to think, Peter, with Crawford being out for most of this year, and they did the stopgap with Cam Ward. I know they signed Colin Delia to an extension. He's maybe the future backup. They need to consider, what do we do in net, because if they had consistent goaltending, they probably would have been a playoff team this year.
Yeah, that's true. They're that close. You have to wonder, right? Like, they're going to save some money by getting rid of Cam Ward because they don't have $3 million on the cap, right? And then Crawford comes off the books after next season. So there's, I think the cap implications of the Blackhawks are slowly being solved while they remain to be somewhat competitive. It just probably going to take, just like you were saying, one or two things that they're going to have to make a tough choice on. But I think they can reset pretty quick here, particularly if the demise of Jonathan Toews has been grossly overstated, given that he's got, 34 goals this year.
Yeah.
And I don't believe either that Stan Bowman can't find a place for Duncan Keith should he choose to. And
I don't know. It's not going to be easy.
It's up to Duncan Keith, though.
It's up to Duncan Keith. That's the next point. It's up to Duncan Keith.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Let's go ahead.
One more thing I would mention. Yokohara's got about 16 points in 25 games with Rockford. He'll probably get a shot at the team. Adam Boqvist is killing it with London.
Right.
He might get a shot at the team. So they're going to actively try and move guys because they do have guys that are close.
Right. They may opt to put Boqvist in Rockford for a year and let him mature, but they could put him there, and if he's able. And was it Gustafsson who scored a ton of points for them this year? First of all, he's not a defensive defenseman. He's sort of a rover, but he's been effective, and I think they extended him for not a big amount, so that was sort of a proactive move for them.
It was proactive. He's done a good job in that role, and you figure in another year or late next year, Boqvist can do that role. So I think they've temporarily plugged that. Look, I think Bowman's done a really good job here. I just, is Dominic Cahoon going to get more than 12 goals next year?
Yeah.
Is Brendan Perlini going to get 20? Maybe he could do that. They're still missing so much. It's just you got 105 points out of Kane, you got 78 out of Taves, you got 74 out of DeBrincat, and then after Gustafson, falls off, you're at the 50s, 30s. Like there's that middle depth that they can't afford to buy, and until it's ready from within their ranks,
right,
that's where they're going to.
And they're spending a combo of over $10 million on Anisimov and Saad.
I mean, just to be fair, what's Connor Murphy making? He's overpaid.
He's a little less than 4.
Yeah, I mean, even that's too much for him.
I didn't think that was a good deal. So now, just to finish off the show with this, everybody knows the Ottawa Senators clinched last place in the NHL last night. Now Colorado is going to make the playoffs and have the best opportunity to win the lottery. And somebody asked me online. They said, when was the last time a team made the playoffs and also had the first pick, or possibly had the first pick? And right away, what popped into my head was Montreal with Doug Wickenheiser back in 1980, where they had won 4 Stanley Cups, and I think they made the playoffs the next year, and they had the number 1 pick via a trade. But I can't remember who it was. I was just, and the famous Guy Lafleur in 71, Montreal got the first pick from, I think it was a trade with either LA or the Oakland Seals. And then they get the number 1 pick and they drafted Lafleur. So it has happened in the past. And in the NBA, I mean, it was number 1 pick, but the Celtics, when they had Larry Bird and McHale, they had Len Bias pick number 2.
I mean, they'll do no worse than 4th, so they're getting a player.
Yeah, they're getting a good player, but it's not unprecedented that a team that made the playoffs had a number 1 pick or had the pick.
No.
So I mean, it has happened before, but
good for them. I will say this: Brian Burke brought up a very good point, and that is, so let's say the season ends tomorrow or even today, and Arizona misses out. They just missed out, but they get the first pick overall in the draft with a minuscule chance. Like that really is unfair to the teams that are struggling at the bottom. And he had the idea of putting in maybe just 5 teams in the lottery for the top pick, and I sort of agree with that.
Which was the way it was before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, remember it was those teams like Toronto who ended up drafting 6th and 7th, and they were locked out of the number 1 pick when it was Stamkos and Tavares. So,
and I do think you shouldn't be able to get more than 1 first overall pick in successive years. I think once you get it, I think that should disqualify you for a couple of years.
We'll never hear the end of it, Russ, if after all this, the Philadelphia Flyers win the lottery and draft Jack Hughes after the pointless run to the playoffs. Ack will never let us hear the end.
Oh, I know.
Sure, but the odds are in our favor, so I don't think that's going to be an issue.
It'll be brutal.
It'll be brutal. Okay, folks, we will probably be off tomorrow.
Yes.
Russ is going to opening day of the inferior New York Major League Baseball.
4-1 New York Mets, which is better than the Yankees. Thank you.
Okay, wait until like next month when.
Right. Actually, we do have to bring up that Jimmy Schultz looks like he's going to Vegas. Really good defenseman. He, I know, in the chat room, Edward was hoping that he would go to Minnesota. Real good player. Played for St. Cloud. He's a Hobie guy. He might win the Hobie. Probably won't though. I mean, I think Cale Makar is going to win the Hobie, but he plays good defensively. He's on the power play. He's a very mature guy. I kind of wonder if Vegas won out here because they said they would use him and they're a playoff team, or at least have him on the roster.
Opportunity, yeah.
Yep.
But Russ will be going to see the Mets. I'll be going to see the AAA Buffalo Bisons opening day, which means lots of beer and hot dogs. Peter, is there a baseball team in Winnipeg?
It's called the Winnipeg Goldeyes. They're a AA team. They play in the Northern League.
Okay.
Do you ever go?
I've gone a couple times. I actually went a couple times last night. It's a beautiful little ballpark down on the river. Right across the street is the Canadian Human Rights Museum. Amazing facility. It's quite nice. It's a good entertainment value. So
you get updates on that in your morning
in your feed.
In your feed?
No.
Why?
I go for the social thing.
Here's
very popular here, and actually Winnipeg has a really interesting sort of strong, particularly in the prairies, outside of town, strong baseball culture. It's actually it's quite surprising to me.
Here's the big update that I will be providing via social media tomorrow.
Uh-oh.
The AAA Bisons changed the name of their ballpark. You know, the branding of it. It was Coca-Cola Field for a number of years.
Right.
Now they've changed it to Salen's Field. Salen's for Salen's hot dogs.
Oh, I've never heard of that. Okay.
Yeah. Now my tradition to going to opening day is to get a hot dog and a beer, but I don't like Salen's hot dogs that much. They have a stand that has Hebrew National kosher beef hot dogs, which are the best.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if now that they've changed it to Salen's Field, whether they will sell anything non-Salen's in the ballpark.
They may have an exclusive.
They may have an exclusive. So it like the peanut story, Russ, there might be a scandal tomorrow at opening day.
Yeah.
I will keep everyone updated.
Thank you. You know what? Honestly, let's be really honest here. There is nothing as good as a good hot dog.
A kosher beef hot dog, Hebrew National, it's the best.
I only eat veggie dogs. I haven't had a hot dog in 30 years. I really don't miss it.
on that positive note.
Yeah. Thanks for that ray of sunshine.
For Peter Tessier, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.